Okay, let's do a bit of a case study, shall we? In the early to mid-2000s, after creating one of the greatest horror games of all time, Capcom asked a deeply brave and revolutionary question. What if horror games, weren't scary? This decision would go on to change all of video games, forever. Would you believe me if I said Resident Evil 4 was amazing? You would, because you've been told that like 10,000 times. I love this game with all my heart, and I could gush about it for hours on end. It has been in my top 3 games ever since I first played it, alongside Majora's Mask and Silent Hill 2. Jesus Christ, no wonder I make video essays. There's so much to admire about it, so much to be inspired by. While I don't really consider the game to be horror, instead it works as a great case study for creating a tense and overwhelming atmosphere. Asterisk. Well, that is if you're using the original hardware. As time has gone on, Resident Evil 4 has moved more and more towards action with each major version. Outside of the Zeebo, also, why are they purple? The game has retroactively changed its reputation, from the Wii version's laser accuracy or the fact it just runs faster now, with the modern versions running at double the frame rate, transforming how the game feels and lending itself better to fast-paced action. And I, as a pretentious dickhead, prefer when it was slower and looked worse, and the controls were bad. Chances are you've been looking at the footage from the original GameCube version, which you probably already guessed, on account of the jagged edges and A button. Playing this version just makes sense. It feels right. So with that in mind, in 2023, Capcom released a game that by all means, I should have hated. Look, I don't want to waste your time with a history lesson. Plenty of other YouTubers will do that, so I'll try to be brief. So remember me talking about one of the greatest horror games ever made and whatever? Well, that was a remake. This video won't be exclusively about remakes, but I do think they represent corporate art in a really clear way. Remakes are a bit of a thorny subject in video game discourse, especially because what they are and what counts as one is kind of up for debate. That being said, Resident Evil 2002 is really interesting because it is, to me at least, the poster child for video game remakes. One that justifies its existence. It kinda needed to happen. Resident Evil 1996 as well, a good first try. It is a classic, but it's, well, hard to recommend to new players. It was held back in many ways, and as a result, failed to express director Shinji Mikami's vision. The GameCube, on the other hand, was powerful enough. As a result, Resident Evil 2002 feels less like a rehash and more like what the game was always supposed to be. It is one of the most beautiful, spooky, and atmospheric games ever. I love to just look at it. It's so faithful to the original, yet feels fresh, feels different, distinct. Better. The Resident Evil Remake series would lay dormant for well over a decade, as the franchise abandoned what made it so great in favour of being racist and all-around shit. Instead of looking back, Resident Evil looked around itself, poorly stealing from other games, smearing awful filters and gasoline all over itself. It would take until indie games and PT brought horror back to the mainstream for Resident Evil to have its renaissance. And it went really well, creating a game that looked like a 2010s horror game, but having that distinct Resident Evil, bullshit. It was now high time to introduce this new Resident Evil audience to classic characters like Leon. Sure, Eamon or Ethan or whatever that guy's name was is cool, but he doesn't do nearly enough backflips. In video game discourse, there are generally 2, maybe 3 terms for these sorts of games: remaster, remake, and maybe reimagining. However, when it comes to Resident Evil 2 and 3, I prefer to use the term adaptation. In the same way you'd adapt a book for the screen, Resident Evil 2 2019 had to adapt its source material to what might as well just be an entirely different medium. And just like other adaptations, certain qualities are lost and gained. It's partly why I find direct comparisons or discussions of cut content to be relatively unhelpful in cases like this, because we unfortunately still think of these games as versions of each other, even subconsciously, when they aren't really like at all. For a long time, I would only focus on what was lost in translation instead of what was gained, how it traded its thick, juicy atmosphere and handcrafted camera angles for modern conventions like dark hallways and forced tension through magnetic zombies. However, the game is great and works as an adaptation. The atmosphere is just different. I mean, of course it is. Resident Evil 3 I view similarly, but with both of these games there was an inkling that something was wrong. Something bad was on the horizon. All it took was looking at the game's store page, where you'd see these. Microtransactions. For some of the dumbest shit. 3 identical guns? Oh boy, how about paying to have a soundtrack? If you're unaware, Resident Evil 2 soundtrack, as good as it is on YouTube, doesn't fucking play anywhere. It basically whispers a song to you once and then fucks off. So if you want to have a soundtrack, better pay up for songs from 1998 and they're janky as fuck. Or how about this one, that lets you skip the game, essentially? If you wanted to, you could start Resident Evil 2 with a fucking infinite rocket launcher that specifies it shoots sharp rockets, as if the stabby part is the most important bit in a bomb. It's a grenade launcher perfectly suited for London. So yeah, something ain't right. As a result, when Resident Evil 4 was announced again, I was not happy. From the marketing at the time, it seemed as if the developers were on autopilot, trying to recreate the success of Resident Evil 2. Once again, seemingly throwing away the original's atmosphere in favour of dark hallways and grabby enemies. What made it worse was that this wasn't really an adaptation. When I said earlier that modern games are essentially a different medium, that medium more or less started in 2005 with Resident Evil 4. And then, turns out I was right about so many things. The game chopped off parts of it that had been in the original for years, only to drip feed it later, or fuck it, make you pay for it. And don't forget that it introduced game-breaking microtransactions, and a lot of them, that allow you to almost instantly get the biggest upgrade for any of your weapons. Don't forget to pre-order, wouldn't want to miss out on the charms in the cases for those extra buffs. Please pay to win at the single player game. Don't forget to buy the pack that makes the soundtrack worse. I should by all means hate this fucking game. Hate its stupid implementations of modern graphics effects that only make it run worse, and look worse too. I should hate the scummy practices. The fucking DRM that makes acquiring the game through questionable means actually better than Steam. I should hate what it did to my favorite fucking game, or one of my... It's complicated. There's just one little teeny tiny problem. Resident Evil 4 Remake is phenomenal. Look, trust me, I want to tell you that it was better back when RE4 came on 2 discs and your console had a handle and controllers looked like, oh, that would be lying. And the lore told me that that's not on. I'm not a game reviewer. I talk about campy horror games like they're classic literature because I have an attention span too shit for real art. I'm here to be pretentious, not tell you about how good it feels to press the A button or whatever, but I can safely say that Resident Evil 4 2023 is one of the most well-designed video games of all time, both just as a video game and as a love letter to my previous favourite video game. The characters are characters now. What? Leon even says Luis's name right this time, because he loves him now. Ashley, look, don't get me wrong, it is very funny that she was voiced by Sandy Cheeks, but she's so neat now. I mean, just look at her. Resident Evil 4 Remake has some genuinely beautiful locations and this just awesome dark fantasy aesthetic that contrasts way nicer with the modern guns and tactical gear. The Merchant? Oh my god, I love the original Merchant, but this fucking guy, ho. I also love that his voice actor was on stream and did not break character for a single second. I'm starting to think he might genuinely be a magical arms dealer. To some degree, yes, the modern controls make it a much more standard action game, but it is the best action game in my opinion. The replay value has been improved over what was previously the most replayable game in the series. Genuinely, so many smart decisions. It feels great triumphing over the most intense challenges and getting cat ears. Man, I mean, that's awesome. Cat ears that give you infinite ammo? It doesn't get better than that. The mercenaries? Addicting. Also, you can fucking like grappling hook a guy and then do a triple fucking spin flip kick to his friend's fucking head. That's video games. Of course, though, the issues are hard to ignore. While the game has some of the best design, it has some of the absolute worst. There are hints of that awful game the trailers promised still within. So why was that so hard for me to recognize? To accept that a game I like has issues I knew were there. 2 years ago to the day, as of writing, the channel Crobecat uploaded the video Soul vs Soulless Resident Evil 4 comparison. And that video is/was, how do I say this nicely? Bumcrap from a
poo-ass.
What is supposed to just be a comparison between the two games is kind of a lie, opening with a shot that is literally not in the game, which sure is him showing off his cool editing skills, but is also deeply misleading. He compares scenes that are not comparable, and of course, allegedly made the remake too quiet to hear the ambient sound design. Krupkat's whole thing is like, new video games are bad because back in 2008, GTA 4 had it so that when a man fell down, it was just like in real life. That is basically it. Essentially, new game bad, old game good, with a focus on epic gamer details, because you gotta have your realism. Since its upload, the video has amassed over 2 million views and 62,000 likes. And there's a discomfort in that, sort of. The idea that so many people believe this about my favourite game. Krupkat actually got a lot of shit for this though, and as a result, since the video's release, hasn't left it alone, and updated the title and description several times. Whether it be him mockingly changing the title, or how he now calls it the forbidden comparison, because he got criticism once. How in responding to the allegations of tampering with the audio, he just said that it doesn't matter, and he wasn't even trying to compare those aspects, and then defend himself anyway, and fucking caps it off with,
professional sellouts know that mob mentality doesn't care about the truth. All that matters is the glorification of the sacred product, thus resorting to uneducated audio-level whataboutism.
Man, that is so embarrassing. When responding to criticism that he was essentially cherry-picking by omitting important scenes and details, he said that
the average reviewer isn't willing to mention what the remake removed or butchered. Otherwise, this comparison wouldn't have been made.
Admitting that the video is essentially supposed to make the game look bad. Something it doesn't even accomplish, Jesus Christ. To further cement that this is not a comparison but instead a hissy fit disguised as games journalism, he linked to one of the only people that agree with him. And that person, to put it lightly, doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Resident Evil 4 Remake is not a masterpiece. It's peak remake culture. It's one thing for Capcom to constantly churn out mediocre remakes. It's quite another, though, for IGN, the Twitter sphere, and most other gaming journalists to claim that Resident Evil 4 Remake is somehow a masterpiece better than the original. In this video, I do not focus on the story, or the voice acting, or politics. The devs are not remaking anything, and they certainly are not improving. In this video, I also talk about what I call remake culture, which is the attitude that games of the past were designed with certain restrictions or elements because they are outdated. Like Resident Evil 4's original camera system is Windows 98, and modern generic camera system is Windows 11. The effect of this remake culture is the full-on acceptance of creating fan fiction versions of already existing games and believing them to be objective improvements because they now abide by generic current gaming design, even if the shift to generic design completely obliterates the core of the gameplay. The end result of this remake culture
He says the village has a western ghost town feel to it, which is an insane thing to say for a clearly European village with like 500 fucking people, and then says they tried to make the remake scarier by making it darker, and then shows a fucking comparison that is brighter.
The worst part about remakes are people's attitudes about them. In theory, remakes could be great, but a lot of the people asking for them are not doing so out of love and respect for the original game. In many cases, they actively dislike the games they're asking to be remade, so they're more in line with what they want. And that's just sad. Now remakes have become a vessel to turn passionately made works of art into content to get hyped for, consume, and then promptly discard.
What really is absurd is seeing how many people are saying RE4R is the best remake when the RE1 remake exists. That game is so faithful, so respectful, and improved so much on the original it became the standard for RE remakes before this new age of remakes that cut content arbitrarily, and people are forgetting that just because RE4R is more fluid and prettier. A lot of this stems from a philosophy around remakes that I consider to be somewhat incoherent. I previously spoke about remake as adaptation, and I'm willing to admit that I was initially wrong about Resident Evil 4. The medium is different now. RE4 2023 is best viewed as an adaptation. The way these people view remakes is deeply flawed. They are under the impression that the point of a remake is solely to be better than the original, that it is there to take what already exists and improve it. As a result, any deviation from the original is taken as an insult. We can see this constantly throughout the comments. As a result, they view anyone who likes these games as insulters, desecrating their favorite games and calling them shit, preferring the newer, shinier game just because it is newer and shinier. Every change a remake made is assumed to be either out of malice for the original or corporate greed. You see lots of complaints about cut content, which I understand to an extent. We'll just get it out of the way now and say that Resident Evil 4 Remake is simply a different game. It is not supposed to be an improvement on the original, but instead a different take on the same core ideas. This opens up the question, can there really be cut content in a full game? The fact of the matter is, the game is about the same length, if not slightly longer than the original. This is why I hate these direct comparisons. Instead of letting each game breathe and be their own thing, it is instead presented as a fight. You'll see people in the comment sections of videos like this talking about how nobody has any respect for the classics, that they're trying to replace our favorite games, but this just isn't true. At least not here. Why I think Resident Evil 4 Remake shouldn't be viewed the way these people see it, where it is this mangling of the original game with no respect for it, comes down to the fact that you can just play the original. Whatever system you were playing Remake on can play the original too. The fact of the matter is that Remake does not consider the old game to be bad. Capcom understands that the janky movement and camera mechanics weren't a bug, but a feature, because you can literally play that game on every single console imaginable. Why would you want it to be the same? Why is it so hard for some people to imagine a world where remakes can be interesting deconstructions, where they can take the original in a new direction? Why is it disrespectful? Why is it butchering to deviate in any single way? And why do I even care? It is a very weird position to be in, especially as a pretentious YouTube dickhead. To bat so hard for a corporation's product feels wrong, like spiritually. No matter how good Resident Evil 4 Remake is, why wasn't it just Resident Evil 9? Because 4 is a beloved property with a built-in audience. The game was always going to do well. 4 Remake had basically no chance of failing. It is a safe, well, boring decision that reeks of corporate nothingness, not aided by the fact that the predominant way remakes are viewed is an attempt to be better, like we established with those comments. And Resident Evil 4 was a game bordering on perfect. It didn't need one. Under that framework, Resident Evil 4 2023 is a pointless game, a cash grab now that the nostalgia cycle has made its way to the 2000s. I used to think like this too. If you're a fan of the show, there's a chance you might be experiencing a bit of deja vu. That's because the ideas and topics we've touched on so far are closely related to a previous video on the channel. And yes, the jokes about remaking a video about remakes almost write themselves. Don't worry though, this episode is quite different. I bring it up because I want to articulate that I empathize with these people. Even if I don't really think they're right, I still get it. All 3 of my favorite games have now received remakes, and only one of them has been good. Majora's Mask 3D initially seemed like a Resident Evil 1 style moment-to-moment remake that is so faithful you think it was a remaster. But it is genuinely insulting. Every change the creators did was because they thought the game was flawed. They took everything fun and interesting out of it and replaced it with at the time standard Zelda conventions. Exactly what Resident Evil is accused of, but like, real. It was an attempt to one-to-one recreate a classic game, but intentionally make it more generic. Strip it of its atmosphere, of the movement mechanics, make it more dull and lifeless, make it clean and modern. Then, there's, you know, that one. This entire video is not about remakes, but I think they truly are the icon of corporate art. A representation of a company so creatively bankrupt they're not even brave enough to just exploit a property they own. No, they have to exploit a specific entry that people care about. And I thought Silent Hill 2 Remake was going to be exactly that. A game, instead of looking within, looked around and contorted itself into the shape of what was popular. A game that should have never been made because it just couldn't work. I wanted to like Silent Hill 2 Remake, and in a vacuum, I do. The problem is pretty simple, however. The game is a replacement, which I know the developers did not intend to be, but the fact is, you can't officially play Silent Hill 2 in any other way. It has to be this remake, one that just isn't the original. When I see critics say that the game is better, that it surpasses the original, I start to feel for those who complained about Ori 4. Because this shit is deeply annoying. Silent Hill 2 Remake should not be thought of as a game trying to surpass the original when it is clearly in conversation with it, trying to defy your expectations. How is it supposed to play with those expectations if a good chunk of its audience cannot even play the original? Due to Konami's greed and incompetence, both of these games are in a worse off state. One is abandonware and the other is forced to be something it's not. It is forced to be Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2 works as well as it does because everything about it contributes to that Silent Hill 2 feeling. If you change anything about any of its aspects, you get a different work. Silent Hill 2 is this wonderful game where even things that might have been mistakes work out to be happy accidents. The voice acting could have been bad because it's bad, but it doesn't matter, it works. It is better because of it. Changing the voice acting made the game worse. As a result, remaking Silent Hill 2 is impossible. It needs that PS2 feeling to be Silent Hill 2, at least as we view it today. It just doesn't hit as hard without it. It is horrible that people don't have access, don't have official support for this game. A game that Konami clearly understands the cultural value of, otherwise they wouldn't be trying to milk it. Make sure to pre-order now, James will wear a silly hat. One of the things that Silent Hill 2 Remake nails is its atmosphere. It is not the same atmosphere as the original, but as we've established, that's fine. It is wonderful, hauntingly beautiful. As someone who lives in Ireland, the raw, dismal scenery just feels right at home. Part of that, of course, is because of the graphics. And I mean that in the like, whoa, PS5 has the biggest fucking computer in it. For a long time now, graphics have been a point of contention in videos game discourse. As long as I can remember at least, the cool contrarian thing to say was that you thought it wasn't about the graphics, it's about the gameplay, which would separate you from the filthy casuals who only cared about pretty pictures. And you know, nowadays, I think that, okay, pull up the Sonic image. No, not that one. So this kind of is, or was, the modern version of that whole thing. And you can tell it's the modern one, because it feels way more condescending. Look, I'm not gonna argue with a JPEG, but I mean, see, what is being expressed here is not necessarily a problem. It is how it is being expressed. There is a tendency among video game talkers on the net to dismiss games with the AAA art style. The games that try to appear cutting edge, pushing graphics forward into realism. There is an understandable frustration with the slurry of realistic games over the past few decades, where it seems like games are filled to the brim with graphics effects and poor optimization just to squeeze more dull visuals out of your dying console. However, like everything, this can go too far. The Sonic image is particularly annoying because it says worse graphics. What it means by that is less realistic, inadvertently buying into the narrative that betterer graphics means more realisticer. What people like this seem to miss is that different visual styles fit different games better, that a game is not automatically lesser or more shallow for trying to look realistic. And I understand that I may be preaching to the choir here, that I'm complaining about a very niche group of people, but I still see this discourse pop up every now and again. I recently played Enna Dream Barbecue, and it is one of the most unique and interesting visual styles of any game ever, and it is genuinely some of the most fun I have ever had. However, that wonderful art style is not a more valid artistic choice than, say, the style of Red Dead Redemption 2. Also, I should note that it's interesting that the Sonic image was accepted as based until a trans woman said it. I wonder what changed. I wonder what factor changed. Like many people, in 2018, my life was permanently changed when a cowboy got sick. Red Dead Redemption 2 is kind of the icon for the blurry quality of AAA games. It has all the seemingly empty vapid nonsense of the biggest map ever, all the epic details that will get Krobby Cat's gamer brain shitting its pants in glee, and the most realisticest of graphics possible. But the issue is that it needs it. The fact is that Red Dead Redemption 2's attention to detail, its visual style, its graphics, all contribute to the mood and atmosphere of the game. The fact playing as Arthur genuinely feels like piloting a lumbering, sick, middle-aged man through the American wilderness is great. I enjoy that you loot a house one item at a time. The game wouldn't work as well if it didn't look like this, if it didn't feel like this. Video games are a visual medium, and sometimes the story it wants to tell requires realism. Of course though, there's that issue. Red Dead Redemption 2 took around 8 years to make, and it should have taken a lot longer. While I defend realism in games, it unfortunately often comes at a cost, as these vile companies exploit their talented workers with bad conditions and crunch time. This taints the art, knowing that playing these games that I love, that resonate with me, having bought them has rewarded a company for mistreating people. Of course, no major company on earth is free of evil, but there's an uncomfortable closeness that makes it harder to ignore. I've been working on a game for a while now. It is my ultimate dream to be a game developer. Video games raised me, and it is an industry that disgusts me. And yet I often feel like I'm in a position where I am almost forced to defend it. In 2014, gamer became a political identity, and that is the funniest thing to have ever happened. While Gamergate was a movement that claimed to be about ethics in games journalism, Gamergate 2 doesn't even pretend to be about that. Gamergate 1 was a targeted harassment campaign going after very specific people that were representations of what they hated that day. While targeted harassment does absolutely exist in the new movement, it feels like it is way more about the games these days. The games are woke. As a progressive YouTuber, sometimes it feels like I, and a lot of people around me, have a sort of knee-jerk reaction to jump in and defend shit from these accusations. Like, it's not even that progressive, it's just a fucking woman. The fact is that the games Gamergate tends to go after are shit games. Of course, they're typically criticizing them for the wrong reasons, but it is still true that they're shit. They're going after EA, Activision, and Ubisoft, companies that produce nothing but slop. The only reason these companies pretend to be progressive is because it is financially beneficial to do so. They're trying to exploit your goodwill, your beliefs, so you will buy the fucking battle pass or some shit. But capital G gamers have politicized disliking certain games. Admittedly, this is a bit of a blind spot for me. Every few months a video comes out called "Why Aren't Games Fun Anymore?" Or worse, "Why Are Games Gay Now?" And I'll be confused, wondering what they could be talking about. But of course the issue is people are buying these bad games that I just have no interest in. I play good video games, and there are so many good games out there. It's always so sad to see people unwilling to branch out in any way, and would just prefer to spend hundreds of dollary dues on something they hate, while complaining that the entire medium is broken. My most popular video is about Zelda. Since I was a child, Zelda has been with me. Even if I might talk more about series like Resident Evil, Zelda will always be my favorite series. It matters so much to me. The personal connection is both a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, resonating with art is just like one of the best parts of being a person, and also I've been extremely lucky to fixate on a franchise so beautiful, revolutionary, and fun. Of course, that is where the curse comes in, because that attachment means seeing what you love fail, it makes it hurt that much more. As I just said, I have been quite lucky that even the franchise's biggest misses are still amazing or end up being the source of endless entertainment and serve as a foundational part of internet culture. That was until 2023. A good chunk of my most popular video is about defending Tears of the Kingdom, a game I don't even really like anymore. It was a knee-jerk reaction. I saw the game get a bunch of criticism, a game in my favorite series. Then of course, it was cemented, because politics got involved. Suddenly I wasn't just defending a game I liked, but also was fighting back against misinformation and bigotry. I was responding to Synthetic Man, an easy target. Hell, I did that when talking about Resident Evil 4 too. Both of these games had a political dimension to them. They were being accused of spreading agendas, of censorship, or spitting in the face of the originals. I didn't bring it up until now, but that was what Crobcat was doing. There was an underlying political dimension to his video. Soul versus Soulless. That's 4chan shit. The video highlights how woke the game is now, since you can't sexually harass Ashley anymore, and Luis is a likable guy. Maybe I'm just lib-cucked, but I feel extra compelled to defend these games because of these accusations. The problem is that Tears of the Kingdom is a bad game. Not because of anything it does specifically. In a vacuum it is a great game, but in context it is awful. It is the first Zelda game that I think I'll forget. It is the first one to make no lasting impact, to be a blip in video game history, not a moment. Not something even worth remembering. The first Zelda game to be genuinely lazy and uninspired, a rehash. The vast majority of what's good about it is from another game. Tears of the Kingdom is brilliant in the same way a really cool mod for your favorite game is. That will be €70 now. There is a point of no return, a point in which defending corporate art becomes impossible, and for many, Nintendo, who have some of the most dedicated superfans, has finally crossed that line. Breath of the Wild was a landmark moment. The game kind of revitalized the open world, showed what the genre could accomplish if it was focused on being like fun instead of bloated. And it came out 8 years ago now. And if you want to buy this 8-year-old game for the first time, the Switch 2 version will run you 70 fucking euro. Woo! Of course there are still people who defend this. We should be grateful. The Direct was amazing. I mean, they announced the most bland looking game I've ever seen. 90 euro Mario Kart. That's over $100 by the way. And Wind Waker finally coming to Switch 2. Like everyone wanted. Not the HD version, but that's fine. I'm glad it's stuck on the Wii U. It's part of a fucking subscription service, and definitely not anti-consumer business model. Yay, a version of Wind Waker I cannot fucking own. I'm so excited to see all the emulator problems and fork over more money for a GameCube controller with a Discord button. Yippee! Many people are increasingly disillusioned with video games as an industry. Hell, many people are disillusioned with creativity and art in general if the disgusting rise of generative AI tells us anything. The fact so many people actively want artists to be replaced, seek the day that it happens, is frightening. There are people who look around and see all the soulless art created today by huge companies with no respect for the mediums they bastardize, and they say it's time to take the last little bit of humanity left. Make it all automated. Make it all entirely soulless. That'll fix it. I wonder if that's foreshadowing anything. Has this ever happened to you? Everywhere on the internet sucks right now. I can't go fucking anywhere. Twitter? More like Twitter. Then I have the perfect fucking solution. Whoa. What was I saying? You need to join the Guys Home for Inspired Vampires server. That's right. The home is a real place that you can go to. Go to. You can send text, images, maybe a little bit of sound. That's right. You can call your friends. Who needs a phone when you got the Guys Home for Inspired Vampires community server? Oh boy. My phone screen just changed color. I'm not even joking. Did I hear that you like amazing emotes? Look at that. Whoa. We got just an immaculate fucking soundboard. Listen to this. I actually do not know what that is. Fun commands. Carl, how do I join the server? Carl, go ahead, my father. Just listen to these amazing reviews.
Let me go grab my controller.
Want more out of your experience? Want more Kai in your life? That's great. I absolutely have the fucking solution. Oh, you've been waiting for this day, haven't you? Oh, you have. You motherfucker. You piece of shit. God damn. That's right. You now. That's right. You now have the ability to give me money. Okay, picture. Oh, I dropped my microphone. Picture this. Imagine you had money, but imagine if I had it instead. And that's Patreon. That's right. So make sure to join the free server. But if you want a little bit extra, a little bit more, consider subscribing on Patreon, because it also it helps me continue what I'm doing. So if you enjoyed this, and if you didn't, do it anyway, because I love dollar. Yippee! I also have an addiction to buying jackets. I'm kidding. I spend it all on Robux. Welcome to the intermission. This is where we take a little bit of a break from the main video, which is probably crazy shit. You're thinking, you're using your brain, and it's like, oh, so many deep thoughts. You're such a genius, Kai, and other words similar to those in meaning. So, holy, you should go follow me on Booski. Fucking, what? Holy shit. What? I forgot a letter. Blue sky. Holy shit. How the fuck did I do that? It's a great place to be. I don't use Twitter anymore because I have human rights and etc. We also, on the intermission, we do this crazy thing. We do this wacky new little thing where if there's any fan art, we'll show it. If you want to draw Kai, or I guess anything else that happens in the video, but it would be weird if it was something else. If you got a Kai in your brain that you need to splurt out into some pixels and or paper, I don't know if you're one of those creeps. Then post it where? Oh, you'll find out where. You can also tag me on Blue Sky. Maybe get a hashtag going. I don't know. I'm not your boss unless I am, in which case I'm sorry. All right, make sure to stay homosexual out there. What? So, I cut a segment out of this video. It was about the Minecraft movie, a Minecraft movie. The point was basically how kind of sad it is that the movie did so well, given that it is, in I think maybe every single way, the icon of a soulless corporate product. Taking a watershed moment in the medium's history, a game that has lived on and stayed strong for over 15 years, art that is seemingly capable of bringing out every single emotion in its players, contorting that into the most bland post-Marvel piece of cinema I think has maybe ever been made, sucks. How people have allowed it to be a success, even if ironic, all it did was prove to executives that this works. That if you play into people's irony and make something purposefully bad, they will give you lots of dollar. All you have to do is get Jack Black to play the same annoying twat character he's been playing from the start, and you will make infinite coin. I cut that segment out because, well, it was fucking annoying. There is an intense embarrassment being an adult, getting upset over a family movie about a children's video game. For as long as internet video has existed, media criticism has dominated it. Admittedly, we've come a long way since angry man no like kids thing. Kinda. But I often worry we've gone a little bit too far. Ever since I started shifting my videos into a more video essay-y direction, I've always been deeply worried about coming off as pretentious. Perhaps it's the Irish cynicism baked into me, but the idea of caring about any of this is just so humiliating. Aw, is the video game not very good? Don't fucking buy it then. Idiot. I get really embarrassed. Recently, I watched a video essay so flawed that it kind of put me in crisis mode. It forced me to reflect on everything I have done and how I criticize media because I saw myself within it. I won't go into too much detail for this person's sake, do not try to find them, but it had all the hallmarks you'd expect. A non-standard aspect ratio, I mean, who would do that last video? Bisexual lighting, and an air of obnoxious self-seriousness, combined with just the sneaking feeling that they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. I could write like 4 entire videos about everything wrong with that one video, but to sum it up, I am just really scared that I'm like that. That I sit here on my high horse complaining about art I don't understand and its fans, as if I'm any authority, or that I pretend any of this matters. Who really cares if some games are bad? Go play the good ones. Who fucking cares what the critical drinker thinks about a bad movie, right? Why even give grifters the time of day? So we briefly talked about Gamergate, that spurred on a broader anti-woke media movement that we are still currently dealing with, and how annoying it is that they have politicized being against corporate art. Mainstream big budget media is their fodder to rip apart. They turn dislike of certain things into these pseudo dog whistles that poison media discourse and analysis. It makes it all awkward. I often wonder if responding to these people is worth it at all, and it unfortunately is. There are real human beings, like you, whose politics are informed by how many minorities are in a Marvel film and how uncomfortable that makes them. There are honest-to-God people who walk among with us, who view art solely through the lens of neurotic or, God forbid, fucking hero hate.
BIT word.
Every medium has its own version. You obviously have blockbuster fan bases like Marvel and Star Wars, and then you got the original gamer version of it all, and one for anime, yippee. All of these bad actors and grifters and hero hey
BIT word
make criticism just that much worse by painting the very act of disliking something as a based political take. Grums. I don't know what is going on with that guy, but something. Oh, I'm tired. This guy was making the rounds. His channel is a fucking cognito hazard. That is the same video like 5 times, dude. I could talk endlessly about this. It would be very easy low-hanging fruit. I could yap forever about the grifter vortex till the day I die. Oh, sorry, I'm on YouTube. Till the day I unalive. You know, that's interesting, right? The original title of this video was Loving Corporate Art, with the asterisk on the loving part, but I realised that was too positive. YouTube and its viewers don't like positivity that much. If you aren't complaining all the time, your career as a media talker on the net is going to be more of an uphill battle than it already is. Oh, your well-written, insightful channel isn't taking off? Have you tried bitchin'? When it comes to being a creator, often we are forced into the boxes corporate art creates for us. YouTube is owned by Google, who are great and have never done anything wrong. I love AdSense and the dollars it gives me. In the fast-moving world of social media, a great opening, people are incentivized to repeat the one thing that worked, because the almighty ancient god that is the algorithm must be appeased, and nobody knows what it actually likes. Is it the Mr. Beast font it craves? Will saying I survived make it happy enough to bless me with boku bucks so I don't have to work a real job? We're so often pressured into making corporate art, formulaic and meaningless, attention-grabbing, playing on people's emotions, making them angry just like the algorithm is designed to do. We make corporate art about corporate art. And honestly, with how dire it can be sometimes, looking back at like a game that is a bit exploitative or unoriginal or poorly optimized is like looking at the fucking Mona Lisa. When I first heard the term second screen viewing, I think a little bit of me died inside. Like many other YouTubers, my primary goal in life was like, make film or TV, and instead I'm stuck in the same place as Brent Rivera, who, side note, seems to have an ongoing war with evil children. So, I hope he loses that one. Second screen viewing is, as the name suggests, media that you put on in the background so you don't have to be alone with your thoughts while you look at more media. It, in and of itself, says something a little bit dire about our attention spans, but I'm not an alarmist. Many of my friends use alarms. I think it is generally okay to put on a podcast or stream while you play a game or something. A movie, though? The real issue is second screen viewing as a term. As you may be aware, streaming services are, allegedly, asking their creators to dumb down their works so that they are more suited to not being watched. Reading this for the first time felt like my childhood dreams were taken out back and shot in the balls and testicles. This is what I mean when I say it is good to hate corporate art. But we need to aim our criticisms correctly, because we often aim at the people who make this art, not the people who forced it to be this way. The reason Ubisoft games are bad is because of the developers, right? Not because of corporate overlords. It's because the developers have the wrong genitals. They don't have gamer genitals. Oh, it's just a fucking gross concept. I recently stumbled upon a video by the YouTuber Flippy. It is about the new skate game, and I agree with most of what he says. That this is the newest case of EA having no respect for its players or the franchises themselves, creating what I can only describe as the worst game I have ever seen since, I don't know, Bubsy 3D. You could probably make this in Roblox or something, and of course it is. Live service, always online and monetized to hell and back. The issue is that Flippy spends just an uncomfortable amount of time shouting at this random woman from a YouTube video. Just some game designer who appeared in a promotional piece designed to make the game look as good as possible, using all the corporate guff words we're used to. But like, it's not her fault the game is bad, she just works here, man. She's a random fucking developer. Do you think they're going to be invited on the show and go, ah sure, the game is well shit, we really fucked this one up. Great way to lose your job. So I lied. Sorry. Just a little white lie. So, okay. The previous work in progress title of this video was Loving Corporate Art. And depending on how bad this video does, it might actually be the current title, we'll see. The very first draft of this video was actually called Zenless Zone Zero, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Slop. For a video about a game, I sure haven't spoken about it even for a second, so let's fix that. Do you remember me talking about Breath of the Wild? Well, it did another little bit of irreparable damage to human society because it ended up being the inspiration for a little game called Genshin Impact, which asks a very bold question. What if Breath of the Wild was a poopy shit game and gambling also? I don't like it very much. It seems to fundamentally misunderstand the mechanics it lifts and chooses over and over again to do the worst possible bit of game design it could do. See, Genshin Impact is a gacha game. Basically, you gamble to get the characters you like, and before it, sure, there were some more elaborate gachas, but for the most part it was pretty contained to just like, wowee, my 2 PNGs of a girl who is actually a gun or a boat or something are going to crunch some numbers and I'll see if I win. Simple mobile game stuff. But Genshin Impact brought gacha to a wider audience, and the much more elaborate medium of the open world RPG. Again, it sucks, whatever. I made the mistake of giving it the time of day because, you know, free download. I'm not really a fan of MiHoYo's games. I think that they're bad. That is the end of the sentence. That being said, there was one game that showed an unprecedented amount of promise. A game that, unlike its predecessors, seemed to have so much personality. A genuinely interesting style that mixes a nostalgic Y2K cyber feel with the fantasy element and monsters of past MiHoYo games. And of course, the animation looked wonderful in comparison to the stiff, awkward, whatever this is that Genshin Impact had. It looked like we finally had something interesting, something that had care and attention put into it, a game that felt like people wanted to make it, something unique. There's so much fun stuff. I love the premise that the evil magic shit, the ether, corrupts a lot of modern technology, so you'll see characters use flip phones, and of course the two protagonists run a video store. You know, that rents and sells tapes. In fact, centering the game around a video store, around film, is such an incredibly smart decision for world building and of course, style. It is so fun seeing and reading about all the in-game movies, all the different art styles on display from their covers, posters and advertisements. But also, like how film reflects and builds our own culture, we can see that within the world of Zenless Zone Zero. Speaking of the protagonists, they are such a step up from the halfway self-insert cardboard that were the Genshin Impact twins. The game took a risk and put the player character not as the cool epic sword hero killman, but instead as this like hacker man in the chair type character. It's such a good framing device and lends itself to many different mechanics. The game also just doesn't feel like a gacha game. Outside of a few pacing problems, it can be played just like a normal game without a hitch in a way Genshin Impact cannot. This is clearly a deliberate choice. The game gives you the story-relevant characters for that main story mission, so it never is odd or too ludonarratively dissonant like other gacha games. New Eridu is such a cool place that it drives you to ignore the best combat a MiHoYo game has ever had and instead go down and get a coffee from the cool robot man. Perpetuate your scratch card addiction with an adorable dog or old woman. Read the news. And cap it off with a fun trip to the arcade with your friends. The fictional friends, that is. The pseudo-dating sim aspects of this game are really good. They help flesh out not just the characters, but also the world, and you actually want to hang out with them because they're fun. Unlike previous MiHoYo games, where a lot of characters within a region can blend into each other and look boring, Zenless Zone Zero splits characters up much more neatly into factions that all have their own vibe. There's so much characterization. This is one of the first games I've ever seen build character via profile pictures and texting style, where a character like Caesar King, who is not that familiar with technology and lives a very rough, outdoorsy lifestyle, struggles to type and send coherent messages. It is so good and so charming, I could gush about it for hours and hours and oh, fuck. Okay, I have read through this script and I realized I made a giant mistake. All of this should have been in past tense. ZZZ is not the game it used to be. Woohoo. For one, I have to reiterate what was implied. I am not the target demographic for gacha games, but I believe I was the target demographic for this game. That is to say, I think what I like is almost diametrically opposed to what the gacha game player enjoys, and that is why I liked this game in the first place. But over time, presumably from complaints from fans, the game has morphed into a much more generic work, feeling like any other gacha game. One of the most obvious ways this manifests is with the characters who over time have gotten less and less visually interesting. In a game so full of personality, this is sad. With each new group, they look more and more like they could be from Honkai or god forbid fucking Genshin Impact. Can you guess if this character is from Genshin Impact or for Zenless Zone Zero? Genuinely? Like if you didn't know already? She even has the patented Genshin Impact design trope of wearing clothes? That was said with a question mark. What the fuck is that? Again, variety is good, but it should still adhere to the core visual style of the game. The gameplay has also gotten less and less varied as time has gone on, as the so-called TV mode was panned. Now again, I think this is because I fundamentally want different things than the gacha game player does. They want their mindless number crunch game with the pretty people in it, while I really don't care about the meta. In fact, I think Mark is a bit of a twat, so I do. TV mode was a clever solution to a problem with these games, which is that they cover a wide variety of scenarios which require a lot of unique mechanics. What TV mode did was abstract everything and represent the world as a sequence of screens. What was great about this was not only did it fit the aesthetic of the game, not only did it fit who your character was and the role they play within the world, but it opened up so much variety. TV mode allowed for actual ludic interaction where there would otherwise be the patented MiHoYo fade to black while it says what happened. happened. See, TV mode has been removed from the main story. Yes, an entire system, a core aspect of the game that made it unique, doesn't exist outside of event minigames or whatever. It was too boring, I guess. I think it might be an attention span issue, or maybe it's the fact that players weren't being bombarded with on-screen depictions of the most generic characters that only exist to fit an exceedingly narrow view of the male gaze. So now all of that has been removed, and instead you get fun stuff happening in cutscenes, off-screen, still images as a fucking black screen. The core gameplay is now less diverse, repetitive combat scenario after combat scenario. They even removed what made the protagonist so interesting. The fact they were vulnerable, normal people, not your standard game heroes. They couldn't enter the hollows or else they'd die. Their insignificance was significant. But no, the two hacker video store owner twins actually have superpowers. Not only can they enter the hollow, but actually they can do it betterer than everyone else and have magic healing and are the bestest people in the world. The tone of the game has gone absolutely insane. All of the fun stuff has been sucked from it, as every story now needs to be serious. The stakes must be higher. We must have characters pulling guns on children. It is worth noting that before a lot of this happened, the credits rolled. That's right, Zenless Zone Zero ended. At least the first season. It didn't end on the highest note, to be particularly honest, but we'll get to that. The fact the game ended is very telling to me. It shows maybe that the team knew that the game's identity was going to be scrubbed away, that their game would be condensed into the most standard gacha package. This is a phenomena that is new. You see, back in the day when you bought your video game, that was kinda it. If there were mistakes or other issues, then the developers would have to release an updated version in the future, as a separate run. With internet connections becoming standard, it allowed for games to be changed on the fly, to be updated. Once you bought the game, you could take it home, and if there were mistakes the developers missed, it wasn't a big deal. They could send out a patch. But soon this led to complacency. Why even finish the game? We can fix issues later. Games outright require internet connections a lot of the time, and that disc you bought probably doesn't even contain the game. Complacency is a huge issue. With advancements in hardware and storage, it feels like games are skipping out on optimization and compression more and more. How is a giant game like Red Dead Redemption 2 smaller than Call of Duty? What the fuck? However, online games lead to the dreaded games as a service. Oh boy, I love owning nothing. These always online games aren't games. They're content delivery platforms. Eat up, piggy. This is where Zenless Zone Zero's biggest issue lies. The fact that it is a live service. The fact that you can witness the developers ruin a game, strip it of anything intriguing in real time is fascinating. Live service is a huge threat in my opinion. The fact that Zenless Zone Zero will be lost, that when the server shut down it'll be gone forever, leaves me with a strange sense of dread. If you care about lost media, then MiHoYo's event-based game design should stress you out. I wish I lived in a world where Zenless Zone Zero was a one and done. A game that you can just buy and yeah, it would be flawed. Some TV segments would drag on, but I'd rather have a flawed game than a generic one. It is only online to make sure you don't own it, to prevent you from hacking or modding because they need to get you. Live service has a bad connotation because it is associated with really scummy practices. I would highly recommend you watch Dan Olsen's video, Manufactured Discontent and Fortnite. Zenless Zone Zero is a storefront with a game attached, at least in the eyes of the higher-ups at MiHoYo. Their primary goal is to get you to spend money, to obfuscate how much everything costs by disguising it behind funny money. These characters are losing their uniqueness, to make more money, to give them wider appeal, to sexualize them further, and they can just do this to the game you already have. They need more money. The initial point of this video was to present you with a bunch of corporate art and then pull back and reveal the humanity of it all. That behind so much of this are artists stuck in these situations. Do you really think it is anyone's dream to make exploitative nonsense? Do you think any kid looks to their future and thinks, God, I really hope I can make a game one day and have it be stretched thin and ruined by constant updates trying to appeal to the lowest common denominator? Their characters are forced to be one note, over-designed and easy to understand, so you'll just buy them. The point of this video has changed somewhat, but I still want to talk about something. The initial spark that made me make this. It's part of a quest called Until Your Memory Fades. What starts out as another silly ZZZ adventure with old granny saying some nonsense and getting scared at the TV slowly unravels into something else. While the writing was on the wall, I just wasn't prepared. Again, this is a game about a cat girl doing like 300 front flips. I really wasn't prepared for such a grounded depiction of dementia. Granny is suffering from an in-universe equivalent, and her memory constantly resets to a pretty traumatic point. Years and years ago, Granny, also known as Lisha Christie, wanted to be an actress more than anything else, but that plan fell through completely. Instead, she ended up as a nurse, taking care of babies, which is an extremely tough position. Though, as time went on, despite her circumstances, she was maybe able to get that big break after all, and enter a beauty pageant as a bit of an underdog. Though, unfortunately, a disaster was occurring at the hospital, and she had to save the children. So she ran to the hospital, and that is where her memory ends. Constantly plagued with the uncertainty of where those children are, if they're safe, if they're even alive, stuck in that one moment. She really did save those children, but she won't know. As her state deteriorates and she herself is hospitalized, those children, now adults, go and visit her, but she doesn't know why. She can't know why. She doesn't understand the impact, the fact these people owe their lives to her, how cherished she is in their mind, how appreciated she is for her bravery. Soon she'll probably forget her name. Of course, that is a very brief summary of a multi-act quest, and you can think that it isn't the most compelling story in the world, and it isn't. You can even think it's a little bit sappy, out of place. But it is human. It is personal. It is quiet. It feels real. That was the original point of the video, to stop and recognize the humanity within the slop. That these studios are filled with people, talented and driven people who want to tell stories and have to work around the limitations of their capitalist nightmare job. They are artists. While writing this video, the guy we've been using as the icon for the consumer who thinks they're a critic of corporate art, Cropecat, uploaded a new video. Seemingly both a response to the recent Oblivion remaster and an elaboration on that Resident Evil 4 video. By all means, I should like this video. It is a celebration of people. I am all for showing love for animators, level designers, and texture artists. All great skills. However, it is just different when he does it. As a result of everything he has done, this video takes on a whole new meaning. The implication, of course, being that modern developers, especially those who worked on the Oblivion remaster, don't care about the art they make, don't care about the texture work. It is devoid of the humanity the original had. The original is a work of art, the new one is simply just a product. As if it just appeared one day, as if a boardroom somehow manifested a video game. The comments all idealize the past and the developers of the 2000s, firmly placing them as the us and modern developers as them. Do you really think nerds don't make games anymore? Get real. This is fan fiction. I would understand if you were speaking this way about id Software in the 90s, who funnily enough Bethesda now owns, I don't know, running with scissors, but no, they're talking about Bethesda as if it was some small indie studio of just a bunch of guys being dudes. The nostalgia cycle has rolled around to the mid-2000s, and I guess it means we can forget the truth. Oblivion was the birth of modern Bethesda. It was a game that streamlined and simplified the franchise, took so much away. It was a game sold with lies, the promise of radiant AI and behavior that will just never happen, celebrity voices to sell you on its legitimacy, and of course, horse armor, the birth of microtransactions. This was the last game before Bethesda would go on to butcher another amazing franchise, this time not even their own. This is what we idolize now. This isn't corporate art. This is filled with soul while modern games aren't. This is a modern game. Let's not forget Resident Evil 4, born out of one of the most anti-consumer practices, an exclusivity deal. These were not people making games in their basement. These were companies. Corporations. You just love that corporate art because back then you probably didn't worry about as many things. It's nostalgia. Things may be worse now, but let's not forget the truth. It is okay to recognize the fault in modern games, but that doesn't mean disparaging other random developers and rewriting the past to better fit your narrative, because people made games and people make games. As an artist, animator, game designer, writer, I cannot stress enough the existential dread that generative AI poses. Look, I'm sure you've heard all about it. AI makes me ill, honestly. It is such a morally bankrupt creation. Robots are cool, but of course we live in the worst timeline. I could yap on, but I do not have an answer. Obviously, art is only one of the many horrors when it comes to AI. Not to sound like a senior citizen complaining about kids these days, but I frequently worry about the long-term consequences of the gooey, uncanny valley world of AI slop that iPad babies are subjected to because of neglectful parents. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on anything because I'm not, but seeing AI sneak its way into video games is so insulting. Zenless Zone Zero has had its own run-in, where the climax of the game was made infinitely more awkward as half of the English cast was missing, so those characters would just be mute. I'm not going to get into that subject, though I will say that it made it really interesting to see anti-woke anime YouTubers start making anti-union videos. The actors have since then been replaced, at least most of them. The concern was over the use of AI by the studio behind the dub. I feel like people do not truly understand the threat it poses. Even if you were a cold-hearted asshole who actually roots for voice actors being replaced by AI, it isn't even replacement. I want you to think of the man-made horror that is these studios allegedly attempting to steal people's voices. To take their voice, essentially take themselves, their very fucking essence, a core part of who they are, and use that in perpetuity for whatever they want. Imagine having your voice stolen. It is terrifying and a reality that I live with as someone who wants to grow on the internet. Some people are far too eager to replace human art with AI. Even some people I respect have gotten dangerously close to advocating for this. How can you hate human beings so much? We are already so isolated, so divided against each other, and yet that still isn't enough for some. They want to take away the core human trait of connecting with art, of expressing something and having it resonate with people. You'd rather the computer did that, as you sit alone, divided from your friends, talking to a plagiarizing robot, watching the worst videos known to man created by a computer who is just guessing based on likelihood. Companies have stolen humanity and want to sell that back to you, and some of us can't wait. All I can say is support real artists. I understand that is trivial given the magnitude of the threats that are corporate greed and AI, but seriously, if there is an artist whose work you enjoy, actually engage with it, like it, repost, share, actually follow them. On a lot of platforms, views don't matter. I know I can fall into that trap of passively consuming, but really at a time like this, support those who try. Buy indie games, watch indie animation, follow and donate to artists. If you care about media, now is the time. I've been Kai from Kai's Home for Aspiring Vampires. And I'm gonna go take a big nap now. Punchline. I would like to thank patrons Goma, Nico, Saxon, Sammy3D, Hyperwaffles, It's June, and Gamma Freya. What?